Hello, my lovely anatomist and physiologist, Michele Glass here. Our topic for this presentation is fractures and how that bone is repaired. So let's define just a few terms here to get ourselves started. So when we talk about a fracture, obviously what we're talking about is a broken bone. And let's just stop and remember for ourselves that we're talking about, not a bone left over as remains. We're talking about living tissue inside of a human being. And so your bone is highly vascularized, meaning lots of blood vessels, and it's highly innervated, meaning lots of nerves. So when you get a fracture, not only are you getting bleeding and pain from the breakage of the bone itself, but you might also be having symptoms related to damage of surrounding tissue. There were described for us in our textbook what's called a closed reduction versus an open reduction. And what this is talking about is in a closed reduction, you can set the bone without surgery. So you can set the bone without surgery, whereas in an open reduction, you have to set the bone with surgery. And the thing to remember here is setting the bone is important because it allows the bone to repair and shape back how it was more originally. So you would expect that bone to heal up even without these interventions, but it may not heal up in a way that's conducive for movement. So if we take a look at this diagram coming from the OpenStax textbook, we can see some different examples of types of fractions. So this diagram is directly in your textbook. A closed fracture, you can see, is happening all inside the soft tissue. There's just a break between the bone, whereas an open, you've got actually a portion of that bone penetrating out of the soft tissue, so extending through the muscle and the skin as well. We have these other examples, and I'm not going to actually talk about them in any level of detail. I'm not going to test on these either. That's just kind of if you're interested. Some of you maybe have personal experiences of fractures, and you might be interested that way. Okay, so let's move on to our discussion of fracture repair. And what we'll see happening to begin is, of course, well, the fracture must occur. And when the fracture occurs, remember you're going to get bleeding from the bone, and depending on the type of fracture, you're going to have bleeding in other tissues. And so we're going to see blood clots forming. The blood clot is something that we'll talk about in cardiovascular system. So that'll be something we talk about in the future. Within about 6 to 8 hours, we get what's called the fracture hematoma. Remember that heme prefix is referring to blood. So fracture hematoma is talking about the overall, stopping of the blood loss that's happening as a result of the fracture. Then within like 48 hours, we start to get the formation of what's called the internal callus. So the internal callus is forming, and what we see is that the internal callus is formed from the chondrocytes, from the endosteum. So internal endosteum, we're talking about the innermost or deep part of the bone, is going to secrete what's called a fibrocartilaginous matrix. Fibrocartilaginous matrix. So that means we're going to have a lot of collagen fibers. This is not a bony matrix. This is a cartilaginous matrix. And this is going to help connect the two broken ends from the inside, right? Because we're doing an internal callus. Next, we see the formation of the external callus. And let me make a note up here that calli is the plural form of callus. So you'll see that here coming up. And the external callus is external. So we should think about this as being on the outside of the bone. So we're going to have both chondrocytes and osteoblasts from the periosteum. So when we talk about both the endosteum and the periosteum, we see they're not only important in the formation of the bone or development of the bone, we saw them involved in both modeling and remodeling, but we also see them here involved in repair. So the chondrocytes will form hyaline cartilage, and the osteoblasts are going to form new bone. So we're going to end up with hyaline cartilage and bone connecting the broken ends. So we have this beautiful kind of connection happening deep and superficially to that broken bone. And then we're going to see three major things happening. We're going to have the osteoclasts, our big cells that can come around and eat up the old bone. They're going to reabsorb our dead bone from the break. We're going to have we're going to have cartilage from the calli. Remember, plural form for callus. From the calli replaced by spongy bone. And also we get osteogenic cells to make osteoblasts, remember? And then those osteoblasts are gonna, give us some new bone formation, okay? And then finally, and I ran out of room, so I'm gonna come up to the top of my screen. So I'm still doing steps. I'm on step 7. We're gonna see the calli, plural form of callus, so both internal and external calli unite. And then we get compact bone. Okay, let's say it this way. Then we get the spongy bone remodeled into compact bone. So let's go through it again. Step 1 is, of course, fracture. So bone breaks. Step 2 is blood clot formation, leading within 6 to 8 hours with to what's called the fracture hematoma. So step 3 is the formation of fracture hematoma. Within 48 hours, we see the formation of the internal callus. So this is deep. This involves cells of the endosteum. So we make a fibrocartilaginous matrix connecting the ends. So that's not bone, that's cartilage. And then we get the formation of the external callus. External is superficial. So this is involving both chondrocytes and osteoblasts. So we're getting not only cartilage, but also bone forming to connect the broken ends. So we get internal and external calli helping to stabilize the break and connect that bone together. Step 6 is when osteoclasts are going to reabsorb the dead bone. We're going to have calli being replaced by spongy bone, and we're getting those osteogenic cells to divide to make osteoblasts to help us form that new bone. So all three of those things are happening together as part of step 6. In step 7, we see that the calli unite and we get full remodeling. So spongy bone, which was formed first, is going to be remodeled into compact bone. So that ultimately this area of repair will be seamless. All right, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.